49er faithful, fans of the Niner Station, welcome back. Thank you again for showing us the support. Please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. We got a fun show for you guys. Today, we beat the Cowboys just like we predicted. Now, it wasn't in the same fashion that we all thought, but a win is a win, right?
What's going on, boys? Happy to be here and talk some 49ers football. Yesterday, the wife and I, we ended up going to the game on Sunday, and it actually was a last-minute audible for us to go. We were actually trying to sell our tickets all week, but probably as other season ticket holders felt the pain, for some reason it was harder to sell these tickets. Probably because both teams heading in weren't as good, so it was a toilet bowl of sorts. But nonetheless, super happy that we went, got our money's worth. As always, the energy in Levi's was so high, especially playing the Cowboys. So with wins hard to come by these days, you can't put a price tag on the good feeling that comes with the victory Monday. So let's get into it, boys.
Yeah, what's up, Thomas Ryan? Ryan pulled a can Brock Purdy style right around noon, I think it was. He texted me, we audible to go to the game, and I think it was a good audible that you guys pulled off with you and your wife there. And you know, the Niners, they won a game they needed to win. I was a little confident, and it kind of was what I said it was going to be, a 17-point game, fourth quarter, and then the Niners do what they do best, is try to blow a lead, but they ended up pulling it off and getting a win they needed to win. And it doesn't matter how it looks. At the end of the day, they're 4-4 going into the bye. They got back to the basics running the football, 230 yards rushing plus, and they just dominated the game in all aspects, in my opinion. Brock Purdy had a bounce-back game like we talked about last podcast. And in my opinion, Devondre Campbell had his best game as a 49er. So I'm excited to get in this victory for the 49ers and what we thought about how it looked and where we're going into this bye and what we can expect coming out of the bye. So let's get into it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Great game by Brock Purdy. One thing you mentioned in our pre-pod that we should spend a little bit of time focusing on is the 49ers rookie class is carrying this team into relevancy, right? If you think about it, Pearsall had a great game. Pooney did another great game. Renardo Green, solid coverage all day. Mustafa, once again, I'm going to shout out your name here because I called you out with the Patrick Mahomes thing. And if you do listen to our podcast, Mustafa, I think you're an amazing player, and you proved it once again. We saw D. Winters make good plays also at the linebacker position. And you're right. Campbell had his best game as a 49er. He was not a liability in any sense of the word. The only time that I got nervous, and I think you guys felt the same way, was in the first quarter. For whatever reason, we had a coverage where he was lined up against CD, and it wasn't a touchdown. So I'll call that a win. Seeing the rookies, though, overall, we haven't seen a rookie class perform well. We've seen rookies here and there perform well. But this year, I mean, we nailed the whole draft class.
Speaking of rookies, a rookie that I thought had a standout performance was Isaac Orendo. And the thing that I like about this 49ers team this 2024 season, despite all the ups and downs that we've had so far in this first half of the season, it seems like we've really embodied that next man up mentality. And props to the running backs coach, Bobby Turner, because, again, we had a running back go down in injury. Jordan Mason left, but what do you know? Next man up, Isaac Orendo stepped up, and he was ready to go. So I owe that to a lot of good coaching, but got to give props to the young rookie because he looked good out there. I know we criticized him in the past for maybe not having the best vision, but man, when he does hit that hole, you could see that speed that really separated him in the combine and what led him to the 49ers. So I'm really proud of what Isaac Orendo did.
Yeah, Isaac Orendo had a breakout game. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, he had that long run, which made the stats inflated a little bit. But yesterday he had 14 carries, I think 86 yards rushing, a touchdown. Could have had a second touchdown, but slid down at the end to run the clock out. Very wise move from a young running back. Credits to Bobby Turner coaching him up. But Isaac Orendo flashed again, right? And kind of like we said a couple of weeks ago, he kind of shows a little bit of that Raheem Mostert explosiveness out of the backfield, something that we don't have without McCaffrey. And they even got him a little active in the passing game as well. He had over 100 yards total, all purpose. And he was definitely a factor in this game. And when Mason went out with re-aggravating the AC joint, he came in and was able to stabilize the Niners running game. And I think on one of those drives, he had back-to-back, 10-plus yard carries. Explosiveness, had one called back because of a holding. Isaac Orendo balled out. Renardo Green was the highest-rated defensive player on the 49ers defensive team. according to PFF. Renardo Green is showing out to be a top corner and is giving me a lot of comfort going into next year. Obviously, speaking ahead, with that we're going to let go of Travis Ward. We're going to re-sign Deommodore Lenoir, and we're going to have Lenoir and Green as our staples at the cornerback position. So the rookies had a great game. Mustafa continues to impress. Hooney, I think, gave up one pressure on like 30, 35, whatever pass attempts we had. Continued to dominate, had a key block on the touchdown run that Guerrero had. So the rookies showed out. They made an impact. And if you're a Cowboys fan, you're like, look, we thought we had a game that we could win, but the young 49ers halted that. They were able to come in and continue the success that we've had against the Cowboys the past couple of years. We are now 4-0 against the Cowboys in the last 4 attempts. And it's a great feeling as a 49er going into the bye week 4-4 after the mess of the start of the season that we've had. And I'm excited to see what this team has going forward coming out of the bye.
You know, one thing about Guerrero also is I've seen massive improvement from snap to snap, right? I mean, we're talking about a guy that all of us thought was a classic Kyle Shanahan running back draft choice that is going to bust. But he's evolved from his first preseason game to the last preseason game where he had the kick return to his NFL snaps where he looked very mediocre at first. We talked about his vision kind of lacking and seeming like he was a combine monster, right? Runs a 4.3, guy's 235. But he didn't look like he knew how to put it together because he didn't have a lot of starting experience in college. He played at Wisconsin and then he played at Louisville, I think. And he was the backup there, right? And then he comes here, and I don't know, 100% has to be Bobby Turner's coaching because he's taken a raw talent and made him a true NFL starter. I think most teams would be happy and would be better if they had Isaac Guerrero as their starting running back.
You can't say enough about the rookies, but remember, guys, I was texting you before the game. I actually was in some weird fantasy football pickle because of injuries, and I texted you guys. I had 3 options on my team, coincidentally all from this Sunday night game. I had Jacob Cowling, 49er rookie receiver, Ricky Pearsall, 49er receiver, and Jalen Tolbert, Cowboys receiver. And I had those 3 choices, and I ended up going with Ricky Pearsall. And I'm very happy with that choice because of all the 3, he did produce the most, and he did have that awesome jet sweep for 39 yards. But it's cool to see him contributing, especially at a time when we really, really need wide receiver help. Juwan Jennings wasn't there to help. He was out with the hip injury. Ayuk's gone for the season. So to have Pearsall, even coming off the gunshot wound, man, it's just awesome to see him out there. But I have to say it, I was looking forward to seeing Jacob Cowling get some action out there. But we saw a lot of Chris Conley, even some Ronnie Bell, and not a whole lot of Jacob Cowling.
Yeah, Cowling was kind of a non-factor on the offensive end. He had a couple nice returns as a punt returner, but it was really great to see Pearsall have an impact on this game. Coming into his second game, right, like you said, after getting shot and missing a bunch of time, he was able to come in after 1 week of practice and have an impact way better than he did last week. He had over 70 yards all purpose. He seemed like he was able to create separation in his routes against man coverage in the zone. And it seemed like him and Purdy had a lot more timing. There was a pass that I saw on Bleacher Report where Purdy threw the ball like 5 yards before Pearsall was coming out of his break. It was that long out. I think it was a third down. And the ball came up quick on Pearsall, and he was able to catch it. And that's one thing I noticed about Pearsall from his college tape at Florida, and then also just kind of some of the highlights we've seen out of camp because he hasn't had a lot of game experience is he has sure hands. And if you put the ball on him, he's going to catch the ball. And he proved that this week. And I think that obviously he's not going to be Brandon Ayuk with his steadiness and influence in the offense. But I think Pearsall can kind of alleviate some of the pains that we're going to miss from Brandon Ayuk being out for the remainder of the year and possibly some of next year. And I think coming out of the bye, Pearsall is going to have a lot more timing with Purdy. I can imagine Purdy's already talking to Pearsall like, hey, it's a bye, but we're going to work every day this week. We're going to get timing down. We're going to go over schemes, what I'm looking for in zone, what I'm looking for in man. And Pearsall looked like he's going to be an impact player for this team. Not a Pro Bowler, not an All-Pro type of guy, but a guy that's going to be clutch for us on key situations, third downs, that can get open. And if he gets that timing down with Purdy, he's going to be a factor for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, fun fact actually about Purdy and Pearsall is they played against each other in high school, which I think they announced during the game, and I thought that was pretty cool in Arizona. Pearsall, we've seen him evolve quite a bit. Again, same thing like the other rookies where we're seeing them take the strides and be contributing members, not like most other teams aren't getting that kind of production from the draft class. Pearsall, once again, totally impressed. I think you're absolutely right, Mark. I think next week, coming out of the bye, they have all that time to develop even better together. And I think Pearsall's performance has put to rest any trade rumors for wide receivers. I still wouldn't mind if we were to get another weapon, but I think Pearsall proved that we could continue to be successful and still make a run this year without Ayuk. Cowing, you're right. I hope that he would get a little bit more in the offense, but all I want out of Cowing right now is to continue to be a solid returner, because all of us know we still have anxiety about anytime a punt happens or a punt return happens, the Kyle Williams days. The days of the 49ers where we would lose a lot of fumbles on punt returns. Cowing is showing that he's very consistent. He could get us 10 to 15 yards in a return, put us in great field position as we move forward. So between him and Pearsall, I'm really curious to see how they continue to evolve, because we still got a lot of football. We got a lot of football season left. And they're playing great now, going into a window where we might even get McCaffrey back. Like, the offense is starting to build momentum. And I think a lot of that is also on Brock Purdy. He's playing excellent football. I mean, the guy he's, Russell Wilson 2.0. He's almost impossible to sack. He can create plays, he can create time, he can allow things to develop. And between that and a evolving, receiving core, production, right? Debo looked great this game. And I think that Debo will be better if Pearsall and Cowing start to create more like coverage, right? Because the defense is going to have to start respecting them, right? Not treating them as a rookie, but they're going to have to actually start to maybe double cover some of these guys here and there. And I think that we can continue to evolve, and we're trending the right direction with our receiving core, even without weapons, right? Like, I know there was a rumor that we're going to trade for Deontay Johnson or Cortland Sutton. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we need to, because it's going to take too long for them to be comfortable in the offense. And why take reps away from guys that you drafted this year that are producing? So I'm actually really excited to see what we can do. And then again, it's really nice to have rookies that produce, because we're not paying them, and we're paying Brandon Ayuk to be injured $30 million a year. So I think nothing but good things from our receiving core moving forward.
Let me tell you, being there for Sunday Night Football on National Tight End Day, it was just awesome, because we have the people's tight end, and he had himself a day. And it was just crazy because he finished the game with 6 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown. But overall, that put George Kittle at 6,777 receiving yards. And he eclipsed the 500 career reception yards, which put him at third most receiving yards in 49ers franchise history, which is pretty crazy considering just the storied history of the 49ers, and seeing George Kittle grow right before our eyes as a tight end, the third most receiving yards in our franchise history. It's just incredible. And to do that on National Tight End Day, you can't say enough about George Kittle, the people's true tight end.
Yeah, it was fun to see George Kittle have a day on National Tight Ends Day, battling injuries. The guy's not 100% healthy, and he was able to go out there and make plays, make an impact. And we said it in the pregame pod that, like, this is a game where George Kittle is going to have to ball out. Their linebackers have not been able to stop the tight end in the passing game, really anybody in the passing game. And he went out there and made a statement, battling injuries, just had a huge impact. And 85 is definitely going to be on the Niners Ring of Honor there in the stadium in the next 10 years. That 85 jersey is going to be one that's going to be worth a lot of money in the future. And it's just fun to see him. George Kittle is one of the funnest guys to watch play football, because whether he's pancaking someone, catching a pass, whatever it is, he's out there having fun. And when he's having fun, the Niners are dominating the football game. And I just love to see it. And even in the post-game interview, they gave him the little championship belt, the WWE style, because they know that he loves it. I don't know if you guys noticed this. He pulled up his shirt a little bit. He had a little gray T-shirt under there, and there's a lot of rumors saying that it was a F Dallas shirt, but he was kind of contemplating, do I want to get fined $15,000 for pulling up my shirt? And he didn't end up doing it. But I'm pretty sure he had a F Dallas shirt underneath his jersey tonight, which was really cool to see. And George Kittle had a hell of a game. And one thing I do want to say is Brock Purdy, man, I cannot be more impressed with the guy. He was very shaky to start the game again. He missed that clutch fourth down play. He threw the ball behind Debo. Initial look, it looked like Debo dropped it, but it was a very bad pass by Purdy. But he settled in the second half, and his legs became a factor in the game. He had the same amount of rushing yards as the Cowboys had total as a team. 56 yards, I think it was. And Purdy just knows when to use his legs. And like you said, Thomas, he's at times he's unsackable. He's just so quick. I think he catches defenses off guard. And his legs were a huge factor in us being able to move the ball. And I just love seeing us come out of the half and score 3 straight touchdowns. Right. And we talked about Ryan, you brought up the point last time where the Cowboys struggle on the opening drive of the game. The Niners are one of the most successful opening drive offenses in the league. They end up having to settle for a field goal in the first drive, but they did the whole Shanahan, right, before half, start the half combo where it was a 10-point swing. They were down 10-3. They get the ball at the end of the half, score a field goal, then get the ball, go down, score a touchdown. Next thing you know, it's 13-10. And that kind of turned the game around. And Deommodore Lenoir, his pick, everything about it was just great. And that's what you want to see from the 49ers when they're clicking. Dominate the game, take advantage of that 8-minute span, 4 minutes before the half, 4 minutes after the half, and create that 10 to 14 point swing. And they did that, and that was a key factor in the 49ers win.
I mean, the Cowboys did come out in the first half and play great football. I'll give Dak credit. He played a really good game against our team, right? Time of possession ended up being 33-12 Niners, 26-48 Cowboys. It was a lot closer than it needed to be. Touching on what you said, I 100% in the first quarter, after one of the Kittle receptions, noticed that he was wearing a gray undershirt. And my first thought was, it's the F Dallas shirt. He might not flash it again because it cost him money, but Kittle carried the team on National Tight End Day. And he created the holiday, right? He's the one that has been the voice for tight ends, but he does it all. I think Kittle in this game proved that he is the best tight end. In the past, people had always said that maybe it was Kelsey, maybe it was Mark Andrews, but Kittle plays physical football. I think he's better at receiving than both of them. Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, you name it. I think Kittle is the best tight end in the game all around, but also the best receiving tight end. And then again, like you said, Mark, Brock Purdy has showed us that in a game where the thing I like about Brock is if Brock struggles, you see Brock change and he makes tweaks and he does different things and he evolves as the game progresses versus we're so used to seeing Jimmy just kind of crumble, right? Jimmy starts to have a bad game. He throws a pick to a linebacker. Jimmy, you have to do the Jimmy gimmies. One thing that we did text about, I will bring up right now is we're still running a little bit more shotgun than I wanted us to be doing. In the first half, it was like all shotgun. I don't know what the breakdown was, but it felt like we were in shotgun the whole time. Second half rolls around. We go back to our bread and butter, under center. Brock doing can at the line, right? All of a sudden, the Niners offense looked great. So kudos to Kyle Shanahan or whoever was internally that made that decision to switch back to our bread and butter and go back under center. But I think we really changed the tide when we started running more under center offensive formations because I think Purdy can do it all, but we do better if Purdy's under center. I know prior to this game, they were talking about how the Niners pass from shotgun 77%, 77, 87%, something like that. Very high. More often than not, they're passing. And defenses know this because they've done it over 7 games. Well, we went back to being under center, and all of a sudden, defenses have no idea how to game plan against us. And we look good. And if we can do the same thing as moving forward, right? Because we have the bye week coming up. I'm hoping Kyle Shanahan can learn from where he was successful and take that and do the same thing next week.
Ryan, can I ask you a question? I want to ask you a question as someone that was there in the stadium, right? So last week I predicted, I went out on a limb and I said, hey, we're going to be up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter and the game's going to be a wrap, right? But knowing the San Francisco 49ers of 2024 is a 2-point lead or a double-digit lead is nothing that's safe with us after the Rams and the Cardinals. And so we're up 27-10 going in the fourth quarter. And then here we go. The Cowboys start making a run. What was the vibe in the stadium after they scored that second wide open CeeDee Lamb touchdown when it's 30-24? What's the vibe in the stadium at that point?
The vibe got a little weird because we've all been here before. This has sort of become a familiar feeling, unfortunately, as terrible as that is to say, how we've become familiar losing leads, giving it up. I talked to my wife. I was like, hey, you think the Niners got this? And she was a lot more worried than I am. So that kind of got me a little uneasy. But, the Niners, we can't have close games like this. And I think that's something that we definitely have to address moving forward, because going into that, we had a comfortable lead and we could have just put them away, and we didn't have to make it as nerve-wracking as they did, and they didn't have to make the vibe change a little bit in that fourth quarter for us. But I could tell you it was not a comfortable feeling, and I hate feeling like that for the 49ers, because that's not 49er football right there.
It happens almost every game, at least every game that we're leading going into the fourth, that we will inevitably, whether it's a turnover, a special teams play, you name it, that'll allow the other team to make it a one-possession game, and it didn't need to be, right? At any given point, this game, I will be honest, I predicted, 40-17 in garbage time touchdowns at the end? Well, we didn't get 40 points. It was much closer, and definitely nerve-wracking, right? I think when the Cowboys had the ball and they scored in I think there was 4 minutes left, they get the ball.
They scored in 70 seconds on one of those drives.
They scored in 70 seconds. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Mark, is it kind of made me go, oh, shit. Here we are. 49ers have once again let the other team back in the game. And, I mean, they're one turnover away from upsetting us again and sending us into, 3-5 purgatory, where we now also our NFC record would be terrible. Right? At this point, the Cowboys are in that situation. Right now, the Cowboys are looking at potentially not having the playoff shot because their division's tough. The Eagles look great. I don't know what the score is right now, but the Giants were playing the Steelers okay in the first quarter. I don't know.
The Commanders had that great game. The Commanders, that Hail Mary is one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
That was a classic Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary by Jaden Daniels, and I think it's now we have to start to think about the Commanders as a true threat, because Jaden Daniels is going to be there. Jaden Daniels is a running quarterback, right? I mean, we struggle against running quarterbacks. So I don't know, do we play them this year? I don't know if we do. I don't think we do.
I don't think we do, but playoffs.
But we will play them in the playoffs, and we will play them in the future. And so, yeah. So, again, the NFC is continually evolving, and we've seemed to always be a powerhouse. And I think this year we might not have to play the Cowboys, but you're right. If we have to play a team like that, I mean, things are going to be a little bit tougher, right, moving forward. So I think the 49ers, though, as a whole, showed that we can come off multiple close game losses and start to trend in the right direction. And that was good to see, right? Again, we talked about this being a must-win game, and we got the win. So it was a little closer than I hoped. I thought it was going to be a blowout. Let's be honest, guys. This game, I think the two things we need to work on coming out of a bye: special teams. We need to fine-tune it. We need to make it not a weak point for our team. And we need to also figure out how to stop letting teams make it a competitive game in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's like common sense, right? You shouldn't let teams back in the game, but we do it every week. We need to change that as we move forward into the bye week.
Yeah, when we're heading into the fourth quarter, I was feeling very confident on my prediction, 35-17. We're sitting there, 7-10. I'm like, okay, another touchdown. That puts us at 34. They'll probably get a garbage time touchdown. I was like, my prediction is going to be right on the money. And then they start making a move, and the Niners kind of go into that prevent the win defense, as I call it. You start dropping it back, letting guys get open in the coverage. And for me, two of the biggest plays were, one, Aaron Banks recovering that fumble that Brock Purdy had. I think if we didn't recover it, Shanahan might have been able to challenge it and say, hey, that was an incomplete pass. But because we recovered it, he didn't challenge it, didn't want to waste the timeout. And then, again, the drive that we had, I think it was a third down, and Brock Purdy gets annihilated. Grando misses the blitz pickup, and I don't know how he did not fumble that football, but he did not fumble the football. He was able to hold on to it, and that was a huge game-changing play for the Niners, because if they would have fumbled the football there, they put the Cowboys right there in scoring position with the momentum going, and it could have been a whole different ball game. So that was a huge play for me. And then another point of the game that I was very nervous was the Cowboys get the ball back, no timeouts. I think they had about 3 minutes left, and they need to go down and score a touchdown. And for the whole season this year, the Niners seemed to not be able to get a stop. And they were able to get a 4-and-out because they went for it on fourth down and stop the Cowboys from being able to move the ball. 4 straight incompletions. And that was a huge, I think, just a momentum changer for the rest of the year for the defense. Because now that instills in them the confidence that, hey, we can go out there and get a stop in this clutch situation where we need a stop. And against the Cardinals, against the Rams, we were unable to do that. And so for me, that was a huge thing for me to see. And Renardo Green played a hell of a game. Mustafa played a hell of a game. Bosa played a hell of a game, I think. We always talk about him, getting pressures. He was leading the league in pressures right now.
Mm-hmm.
He led the team in pressures. He had a sack finally, but he was a huge impact on that first pick by Dak Prescott in the first half. And I just think that the defense met the moment and provided us with a positive mindset going into the home stretch in these last 9 games to close the season out. And what I want to ask you guys is, this Cowboys win was a huge win. It sets us up to be in the playoff push, get ourselves in the dance. Doesn't matter if we're a top seed or not. Just got to get in there. Do you look at the Niners going into this bye making a move? And if you do think they're going to make a move in the trade deadline, what kind of move would you like them to make?
We talked about it earlier, actually, how we actually do feel comfortable, despite the injuries, with what we have at receiver. Yes, we do have young receivers, but we're comfortable with their growth, what we've seen so far, and what we feel like they could contribute for the rest of the year. So I think for that reason, we should probably focus on the defensive side. And I've seen a lot of reports with some familiar names out there, i.e. DeForest Buckner. If we can get a guy like him back on the team, solidify that defensive line, and I think Thomas mentioned this in our text thread about it, you get a leader, you get a solid individual, solid character man in that locker room. And we all know DeForest Buckner, the kind of guy he is. He's a leader on and off the field. So that's where I would like to see the 49ers go, is the defensive side.
We should have never let DeForest Buckner leave. I mean, look, we traded DeForest Buckner for a first-round pick, then turned that 13th over. It was the 12th overall pick. We then traded back. I don't know who we got with the other pick, but with the 13th overall pick, we took Kinlaw, and we all know how that turned out. I mean, it wasn't exactly what we hoped for, right? We took another injured player, hoped that he would do well, and he's doing okay on the Jets. But I mean, again, the guy wasn't the person that he wasn't able to replicate anywhere near what DeForest Buckner could do. And the thing I like most about DeForest Buckner, again, I think Ryan, you just mentioned what I had said, but for those of us that aren't in our text thread, so everyone listening, DeForest Buckner is probably the highest character player you could have. He's an example in every sense of the word. And what he does when he plays, for people that don't pay a lot of attention to this, DeForest Buckner is a defensive lineman that will make a tackle downfield. That doesn't happen very often. His effort is endless. He plays from whistle to whistle. He's also, 6'8"? He can take double. He can take double teams, and he's a pass rush threat. He's a run defense threat. I mean, the thing about the Niners is we've always, ever since he's left, we've kind of struggled up the middle, right? People have gashed us up the middle, left and right, and it's not because of Fred Warner or Greenlaw. It's because the D line isn't eating the double team. It's because the D line isn't. No offense to Hargrave, but he is no DeForest Buckner. So a player like that arguably could be the difference between us being an NFC championship appearance team and a Super Bowl champion team. Totally worth the money. I think that John Lynch will make a move, and I do think that the best choice is to focus on the D-line, interior D-line. We usually do something for like an end or an edge rusher at the trade deadline, but Sam O is playing phenomenal football. One thing that we haven't talked about is Sam O. I think Sam O is outperforming Leonard Floyd, and that's hard to do. I mean, Leonard Floyd is a residual 10-sack player, and Sam O, with Chris Cassera coaching him up, has gone from being like a good player to being a great player. And with Sam O and potentially Leonard Floyd getting back into true Leonard Floyd form, and then you add a person like Defoe and in the middle, I mean, we go from being a good defensive line again to being a great defensive line. So we'll find out what happens in the next few days, but that is something that I would love to see John Lynch make a move for, because we have to be aggressive. We're in a position where we could make a run, and we're like 1 or 2 players away, and I think Defoe is definitely that player. There's a couple other people that I've heard rumors about, but again, DeForest Buckner would be my number one choice. If we could find a way to convince Indianapolis, even though they're doing okay, they're still not really in a position to make a run, so they might be selling. And I think John Lynch is a great general manager, and he's really, 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 really good at making splash trades at the deadline, right? I mean, we brought in Christian McCaffrey, absolutely worth all the draft picks. I'm just curious to see like what he does this year, but we're going into a bye off a win. Can you imagine the momentum that we would have if we brought in DeForest Buckner? I mean, that's insane. Just to think that we could also bring him back, make a run, hopefully, I mean, get a ring, let him get a ring, because he's not going to get a ring in Indianapolis, right? And then DeForest Buckner could, I think we talked about it, Ryan, you said he could retire as a Niner. That's awesome. That's just a great story, right? We drafted him as a first-round draft pick. I think he was a 7th or 8th overall pick when we took him, right? Then we took Armstead. Like, we're going to get back to the core that we used to have, right? Where we used to have this D-line that everyone was frightened about. So what I want to see is John Lynch be aggressive. I'm glad that it might not be for a receiver, right? If we're gonna mortgage our future with draft picks, let's go for it. Let's get a guy like DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if we make a trade, I think John Lynch will definitely make a trade, is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. Our offense is not the issue. Our defense is the issue. And we mentioned Calais Campbell last pod. We mentioned just needing to solidify that defensive line. And DeForest Buckner would be, I think, a better addition than Calais Campbell because he knows the system. He knows the standard of the 49ers. He grew up as a 49er in the NFL, and he would be a solid addition. And so could you imagine something about Sam O is they threw a wrinkle in this week, and they kind of went with they call it the NASCAR D line on the pass rush situations. They put him in on D tackle, and he was able to create havoc going against guards and centers. And so could you imagine a D line where you have Samo, Leonard Floyd, Bosa, and then Buckner there in the middle? Like, that would be solid. And then on rundowns, you have him with Malik Collins right there in the middle. Like, you have a solidified defensive line that could arguably be one of the best in the NFL if you get someone like that along those lines. And so I think that's going to be the move for the 49ers, is bringing in an interior defensive lineman. An interesting name I heard on the Kruger podcast this week was Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals, the defensive end. I think that would also be another solid guy to bring in, because then you could have, Trey and Bosa being your bookend ends, and then you have Leonard Floyd coming off as a rotational piece, which is a position that he's succeeded really well in the past with, and has been able to make an impact with. So I think the 49ers going into this bye week, John Lynch is on the phones looking for defensive linemen to solidify, that defense, because I think that's really our weak link. Obviously, Devondre Campbell, we've talked about him, but I like our young linebackers, D. Winter, like Jalen Graham. We're going to get Greenlaw back at some point, hopefully. So I think 49er fans can look forward to a trade for a defensive lineman, and maybe two, because we have tons of cap space on the team this year, right? Obviously, we have to pay Purdy in the offseason. We have to pay Lenore in the offseason. But as far as it goes this year, we have a ton of cap space. And so we can bring in one or two guys that do have maybe a hefty cap space hit, but you're only paying for half a year on that. And then also, I think DeForest Buckner, Trey Hendrickson are guys that could possibly stay with the team past this year and make an impact going forward. So I think for us as Niner fans, we're looking for John Lynch to get in his bag, make an midseason trade, and get ourselves a defensive line that is now going from young and has some holes to being really a top defensive line in the league.
And we talked about we could potentially see teams like young Washington Commanders with Jaden Daniels. And I think if we want to prepare for a situation like that with a mobile quarterback, this is the way to do it. Fortify that defensive line.
And we're getting a lot of production out of the signings so far, right? I think we've done really well, right? Malik Collins is great. Jordan Elliott has performed pretty well. But all of these players exponentially get better if you add another starter and star player like Buckner or Hendrickson. So, John Lynch, do your thing, man. I mean, let's close it out. Let's make a push. I mean, we're right there. We're realistically, we're a couple plays away from being 6-2 instead of 4-4. And how do you change that for the rest of the season? You make moves at the trade deadline, and we've done it every year. And so this is classic Niners. We're putting ourselves in the position to be successful. All we need is one or two more players, and they need to be on the D-line, because we've seen another person we didn't talk about, Tig Brown, Jair Brown, playing excellent safety. We're going to get Hufanga back also, right? We're going to get players like like Dre Greenlaw. right? I mean, you have Renardo Green playing good football. Travarius Ward is injured, but he's still playing pretty well. I'm not seeing the gap on the DBs or the defense or the backers with Campbell playing well. The gap is our run defense, and we need better production out of the middle of the field, and you get that 100% from Buckner. You can increase the production out of your interior D line by adding a guy like Trey Hendrickson. I think John Lynch is gonna. I mean, as a Pro Bowl football player, John Lynch is going to see the exact same thing that we're talking about right now, and he's going to at least at the very least make the call and see what he can see what he can churn up. With that, 49er faithful, we are 4-4 going into the bye week, and thank you if you've listened this long. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, pay attention. We got some exciting things coming up that we talked about, and I'll save it for our next podcast before we leak a little bit of what's going to happen in the future. But let's just say there's going to be some very exciting podcasts coming up. It's not just going to be the three of us, and that's the only hint I'll give you. But with that, boys, bang bang.
Niner gang.
Niner gang.